In 1980, the owners of a Las Vegas casino had just made a huge mistake, though they didn't know it yet. They decided to press charges against a young man caught cheating right after winning a jackpot of just $35. Tommy Carmichael, a 34-year-old TV repairman, broke and recently divorced. That night, he was arrested, and the punishment? 5 years in prison for fraud. The feeling of injustice burned inside him, and they would pay for it, them, and every casino in Las Vegas. Because once he got out of prison, Tommy had only one mission: to bring down the casinos that had destroyed his life, over just $35. But nothing comes without a cost. Although, let's not get ahead of ourselves, it all began in prison. That cold, gray place where stories often end was exactly where Tommy's story truly began. And it was there that he met Mike Balsamo, a man who practically breathed schemes and deception. At 39, Mike had already lived more lives than most people ever will. He wasn't just a con artist, he was a legend among scam circles. Since the age of 11, Mike had been slipping through casino floors like a ghost, learning every weakness in the system. Mike was one of the masterminds behind the infamous coin-on-a-string trick, a method so simple and bold, it became folklore in gambling circles. Drop the coin in, pull it back out, repeat. At least until the machines got smarter. In prison, their plans were almost criminal poetry, inventing devices, beating the system, outsmarting Las Vegas. But once out, Tommy realized that dreaming wasn't enough. Balsamo remained behind bars for a few more months while Tommy ran into a new reality. 5 years had been enough for casinos to become fortresses. The slot machines he once knew were gone. The old scams no longer worked. The slots were safer, more modern, smarter. But so was Tommy. Determined, he pretended to be a casino owner and managed to deceive the largest slot machine manufacturer in the country. He asked for a sample machine, and they gave it to him. He took the machine home like a trophy. His plan was simple: open it up, study every wire, every circuit, and find the secret switch that triggered the jackpot. But he quickly discovered it wasn't that easy. The machine was built to withstand any tampering, sealed tight, nearly impenetrable, and every old trick simply didn't work. For 6 months, Tommy lived in obsession, day and night dismantling, testing, failing, until finally, among schematics and screwdrivers, he found a small gap in the system, a crack in the wall that led directly to the coin dispenser. And through that crack, he would create his first device, the monkey paw. And just days after Tommy finished his first big invention, Mike Balsamo was released from prison and joined him immediately. But there was a problem. Tommy was afraid. He had just spent the last 5 years behind bars, and he didn't want to go back. And that's where Mike came in. With over 25 years spent in and around casinos and plenty of time to think behind bars, he had designed an almost perfect plan. First, they hired 2 women with a flawless image. They would sit on either side of Tommy to shield him, hiding his movements. Naturally, they took their cut, 20%, but that wasn't all. They also hired 2 other women, this time with a more careless, disheveled look, who worked alone. Their job: draw attention in other areas of the casino, distract the staff, and redirect their focus. And like a well-rehearsed heist, they followed 3 sacred rules. Rule number 1, always go during peak hours. The busier the casino, the harder it was for a guard to notice a single machine. Rule number 2, never stay too long. They'd make $200, then move immediately. And the last rule, stay calm. Always act like nothing was happening. Because if there's one thing more suspicious than a thief, it's a nervous thief. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Between Tommy and Mike, they were pulling in $3,000 each per day. In today's terms, that's around $11,000 daily, adjusted for inflation. Their lives changed completely. Luxury cars, mansions, parties, everything they had once dreamed of was now theirs. But one night, while Mike was celebrating as usual, Tommy looked more thoughtful than usual. Because the mission he had set for himself wasn't just about getting rich. He wanted to ruin the casinos, destroy them from the inside. And not only that, for months, several contacts had been warning him that a new generation of slot machines was already in development. Machines that were impenetrable, systems almost impossible to beat. Not even a week had passed when the new machines took over Las Vegas. At the peak of the gambling boom, the monkey paw was already useless. Tommy and Mike had to start all over again, and tension began to rise between them. Mike, convinced that these new machines were impenetrable, decided to step back, at least until he could believe in the project again. Several people had warned Tommy about Mike, that he wasn't trustworthy, that he should be careful. But Tommy never listened. After all, he was his prison buddy, right? They had shared the same goal, hadn't they? The next day, Tommy pulled off his master move once again, this time alone. Disguised as a casino owner, he contacted the manufacturers and smoothly requested a test unit. While chatting casually with the salesman, he learned a crucial detail. The machines were considered foolproof, using a light sensor to count every single coin. That was all Tommy needed to hear. However, that very night, Tommy took the machine home, determined to outsmart the sensor and make every single token drop at once. He spent days studying its mechanisms and testing ideas. And then, less than a week later, he cracked it. Tommy invented the light wand, a clever little device designed to block the sensor. When a coin dropped, the sensor couldn't detect it, and that single glitch triggered a cascade, sending every token tumbling out until the machine's entire reserve was emptied. Just one day before putting the light wand into action, Tommy came to a realization. A single device wouldn't be enough to bring down Las Vegas, and the risk of landing back in prison was growing by the hour. Casinos had armored themselves with more cameras, more guards, and another 5-year sentence wasn't part of his future. That's when he made a genius pivot. What if he didn't use the light wand, but sold it instead? And just like that, chaos in the casinos would spread, without him ever stepping foot inside one. That was the birth of Tommy's empire. He sold each wand, which cost barely $3 to make, for $30,000 apiece. Within weeks, he was pulling in millions every month, while others carried out the dirty work on the casino floors. With money flowing in and power at his fingertips, Tommy began to believe he was untouchable. He swapped his old hoodie for tailored suits, traded motels for penthouse suites, and moved through life with the swagger of a man who had outsmarted the system. But in the shadows, enemies multiplied, and so did the eyes watching him. And soon, Tommy began making mistakes that would put his entire empire at risk. The light wand had become so notorious that hundreds of players were getting arrested, and the cops only had one question. Where did you get this device? As time passed, all eyes turned to Tommy Carmichael, but no matter how hard they tried, investigators couldn't pin anything on him. Sensing the heat closing in, Tommy vanished. He bought himself an old RV and hit the road, living off the grid. But life on the run didn't mean laying low. Behind the scenes, he was secretly developing a brand new device, and of course, still selling light wands, until he sold one to the wrong man. One of his most unexpected buyers was his friend and former partner, Mike Balsamo. After a few drinks and a moment of misplaced trust, Tommy let slip a few words about the new secret project he was working on, and handed Mike a light wand as a gift for all the moments they'd shared. He didn't know it yet, but it was a big mistake. Because just the next day, Mike started using it, and in the most reckless way imaginable. Drunk, careless, and ignoring the 3 golden rules, he strutted into a casino in broad daylight. No distractions, no cover, no plan. The result? Predictable. He was arrested almost instantly. Hauled into an interrogation room, Mike was given 2 brutal choices: spend 5 years behind bars, or finally give the cops the one thing they'd been hunting for all along. And then, something curious happened. Mike stopped appearing in any of the reports. There was no trial, no conviction, not even a public mugshot, nothing. But right after that, the alarms started blaring for something much bigger. The focus had shifted. No longer was it about the light wand, but a new device. One that no one knew about, yet it was leaving a trail that could not be ignored. They called it the Tong. And it wasn't just an evolution of the light wand. It was on an entirely different level. The trick? It no longer had anything to do with making coins drop. Casinos had evolved. The newest slot machines no longer paid out in cash. They printed a ticket showing the player's balance, and that's exactly what the Tong exploited. This small device could be inserted into the ticket printing system of certain machines. Once inside, it generated fake money vouchers, perfectly valid, indistinguishable from the real ones. All you had to do was print and cash them out. And curiously, The agents knew who the inventor was and all his plans. According to very reliable information that reached the FBI, the creator of the device was about to take a flight to Atlantic City. The FBI had been tracking him for weeks. They knew the flight date, the seat number, and that he would be traveling alone. Although in reality, he wasn't alone for a single second. 3 federal agents were on the same flight with him. One sat right behind him, another 2 rows ahead, and the third right next to him. Throughout the entire flight, he shared snacks, turbulence, and even casual conversation with the very people who would arrest him. And he wouldn't be traveling light. He was carrying 5 units of the Tong, ready to be sold to several buyers who would be waiting for him at the airport. A quick, clean deal, valued at over $1.2 million in cash. Outside, the operation was just as precisely calibrated. Undercover agents filled the entire terminal, disguised as passengers, security staff, even runway mechanics. The instruction was clear: wait until the plane landed. There, the 3 agents would follow him through the crowd to the arrival's exit, where the outside team would only have to wait until the doors slid open. It was Tommy Carmichael, the most wanted man in the casino world, the inventor of the Tong, and the main character in a betrayal he hadn't yet discovered. After being caught using a light wand in broad daylight, Mike Balsamo sat down at a table and chose freedom in exchange for information. And Mike gave it all up. He talked about Tommy, the plans, the flights, the sales. He even talked about the new secret project that Tommy trusted him enough to share, the Tong. Over the course of 5 years, it's estimated that thanks to Tommy's clever inventions, over $50 million have been scammed from casinos. But this time, the sentence and punishment weren't any harsher. After serving just 11 months in prison, Tommy wasn't hunted by the casinos anymore. The very same ones who once despised him ended up hiring him. Because if anyone knew how to break them, it was him. Tommy's true enemy was never the machines. It was his best friend,